We've been discussing quantum computing, quantum security, and this is the second and the last episode. And today we are going to talk about why quantum security matters. To understand why quantum security matters, we need to understand what makes quantum computers fundamentally different from classical ones. We did briefly talk about it in the first episode. If in case you missed it, I would like you to go listen to it again. Classical computers process information as bits, zeros or ones. Quantum computers use qubits, which can exist in multiple states at once and become enlarged with each other or engaged with each other. This doesn't make them faster at everything, but it gives them extraordinary power to specific mathematical problems, especially the ones modern cryptography depends on. That difference is what turns quantum computing into a security challenge, rather than just another performance upgrade. To have this conversation, I have with me Benjamin Luck, who is also the founder and secretary of IC2 Queensland chapter. He would be talking through today with us in terms of why it matters to us. And in our side conversation, he mentioned that we are already in the quantum era. So it's happened. So what do we do now? Or we may use post-quantum. What should we be doing and why it matters? Ben, welcome again to the show and thank you for making time.
Sujit, to talk more quantum matters.
You're welcome. So, Ben, in the first episode, you gave an introduction. Maybe if you think it is relevant to touch on some of those points, technical in terms of algorithms and about the emerging standards, if you could just briefly introduce and then we can roll into our conversation.
So, in the first cast, we talked about how quantum computers are now becoming a risk to cryptography systems. And this is happening quicker than expected, not only from the hardware and the qubit side and how well they can process without errors, but also for improving algorithms for that, which is also complementary to AI, which has helped or will help further refine those algorithms to make those systems actually better at doing those mathematical operations. So we kind of went through, I guess, the stage where, well, here's all the bad news, and here's how quickly what we call our Q-Day, where currently we're in a post-quantum cryptography world, but Q-Day is when finally these systems will become good at dealing with cryptography mathematics and becoming a risk. So where do we go from here? So now, not everyone has not been working towards it. There's definitely governments that have been working towards this. They have put some standards or tried to put some standards in place. There are some rather large players, there are particular large banking players which have already started the process. At the same time, though, too, there's a lot of other companies that haven't, or organizations haven't, particularly from organizations or companies or governments that don't necessarily have the resources. And we kind of have a fragmented global approach to this as well. So we've got this problem where not all countries are looking at the same timeline, same requirements, which in its own sense also produces a bit of a security risk. So even though larger banks may have already started the process and started looking at what we'll talk about shortly, the ways that you can protect yourself in a post-quantum cryptography world of Q-Day, but there's a lot of smaller banks, building societies, companies, and so forth, which are still linked to these larger organizations, that may not make it on time, may not have that in place. And this can become a risk for vendors, can become a risk for supply chain, can become a risk for information that may exist outside of those larger organizations that may already be in place with that. So information doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's often shared between organizations. So, to have a secure household, it's great to have a secure neighborhood. It's just one of those things where we really need that. So when we start looking at those particular questions, how does one start a journey through this? Maybe you're lucky in one of those companies where someone's already started this. That's great. But maybe just tap on your CISO shoulder and say, maybe we need to go a bit faster. Just a hint on that. But the whole thing is not somewhere where you can just patch something. It's not Patch Tuesday when it comes to cryptography. There's a lot of different applications, phones, computers, networking equipment, all these different technologies need to be audited and looked at and go, well, what are we doing? What are we using? Hard drive encryption, network encryption. It's at rest, in transit. So we need to start looking at what are we using. And as Sujit mentioned in our previous podcast, I asked him what stuff, what encryptions he's using at the moment. And he pointed out RSA. Well, we can't have that in 5 years. It's just one of those ones we need to get rid of. And probably we should be already looking at getting rid of it. But we still teach it. I don't know why. It's still around. We go to university, they'll teach you about RSA and how to do it all, but we're not having those conversations yet. So how do we stop quantum computers cracking our cryptography using this mathematics? So we need to use mathematics that quantum computers are not good at, essentially. So they'll be using things like lattices. Luckily, hash-based signatures are still pretty strong against that sort of attack as well from quantum computers, and code-based cryptography. So we've got some ways that we can strengthen our cryptography, and this is what you'll have to start looking at when you start looking at auditing your systems, both the data in transit and at rest, which will be things like maybe using Kyber, that's a particular one, or dilithium. These are latest lattice-based cryptography systems, or using stronger symmetrical encryption. So where you're using AES 128 before, you should be using AES 256. So being that sort of proactive, getting those up there. So some improvements, like going from 128 to 256, probably not that difficult. Probably a switch somewhere. You probably can already do it. It's a bit harder with the asymmetrical encryption there. So, and not all your systems are going to support these particular protocols. So what do we do with that? So how do we make sure that, particularly things like embedded systems or IoT systems or legacy VPNs or hard-coded components in software, how do we fix that? Now, we're going to start talking to our vendors, people producing this sort of equipment, producing the software. Sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes they don't exist anymore, out of business, or not supported product. We may have to look at upgrading these systems, may have to look at changing these systems. Now, as I said before, this will be a journey. It's not something you can do as a Patch Tuesday. So there's so many things, you have to sit down and work through these. And the journey will be probably dealing with the low-hanging fruit first, because you need to start somewhere and then work your way forward. Because if you start your journey, you're not going to have this problem where Q-Day happens and all of a sudden it's a rush, and that's a really bad thing for operations. It's a really bad thing for your public relations. It's a really bad thing for your finances and operational requirements. So start now. Just start thinking about it. Start working your way through it. And I guess talking about that, sort of All you got to do is like the same question I asked Sujit, like, what encryptions do you use? And start thinking about that, and you'll probably start answering your own questions pretty quickly.
And also, I think we need to add to that list. Do you hard code it to your applications? Right? Or are you custom making your algorithms or your keys? Right? And these are hard questions which people need to ask, and they got to sift through all their assets to uncover where it is being used. Where right now it's hidden somewhere. It works the right way or the wrong way.
Right.
But as you rightly said, when things go wrong, it's going to have a huge impact on the brand, the reputation, regulatory requirements, so penalties. And in some cases, if the regulator says, it's a negligence and the directors are going to be held liable, then the consequences are even greater. Yeah, Ben, you was trying to say something.
That's right. No, you're correct about the software component. And sometimes they can be unknowns, and particularly with vendors as well. They could be doing particular stuff, or particular operations inside their equipment that you may not know. So there are some unknowns there, and this is why we do need to talk to your vendors, see what they're doing, say, are you guys on board to be ready by this time, so we can make sure we're implementing the right best practices that's through your vendors, as well as any custom code. Important for that as well. AI could help to certain degrees. I think AI is a very early area in looking at maybe software auditing. I guess this is probably some area that's doing some development actually in regards to looking at quantum systems, in regards to looking at readiness, auditing components of that. There would be some components already available for those sorts of audits, but I'm unsure personally of anything particularly towards those particular requirements. Please, anyone reach out if they have any information on that. It'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and also too, there's alternative controls. It's like not everything has to be about, oh no, I need to now re-encrypt all my symmetrical encryption on a hard drive that was DES or AES 128. And you can mitigate that. You can go, well, okay, actually we'll air gap this. We'll take this data offline. We'll air gap it. We can deal with it later. That's quite a reasonable control to get yourself ready. You can come back to that later. So there's certain ways that you can approach this without being very burdensome. And so too, just making sure that, I guess you've always got that in mind when you're putting new systems in as well. So if you've got anything already in project plan or you're coming along, pull that project plan up, something's going to be implemented, double check. Make sure that it is already going to be ready for that quantum world before you've just invested in something new. Or there's something ready to fix that when there's some future point that's reasonable. Hopefully, even though this says 2030, I would recommend 2027. So, just a hint.
Yeah. We are at the eve of 2027 already. It's not too far away. Right? So how you look at it, whether you would treat the first quarter of 2026 as 2027 to be ready, or the last quarter of 2026 and say, okay, you're going to be ready by 2027 first quarter. So that's a conversation every organization should have. Then I'm just going to ask you, you did mention some of the governments, not all governments, some of the governments and some of the large organizations, especially in the banking industry, they've already started this journey maybe 3-4 years ago. Right? So they're doing their assessments and they're kind of building up going into the future. And as we speak, there are smaller organizations and of course the larger ones. Some of them have not even given a thought to it. I mean, for me, it's two parts, right? Some of them probably know they need to do it, but they have other priorities. But there are others, they don't understand cryptography, right? Because one, it is mathematical. Two, it's to do with physics, right?
Yep.
Right. So typically you find people, avoiding mathematics and physics. That's going to be a huge problem for the organizations. So I would like you to list down, if you can, where should they start and how should they be navigating in the next couple of months, and what should they be aiming to get by end of 2026 or beginning of 2027. Then,
So, first of all, get educated. You don't have to be a mathematician or a physicist. There's lots of video. There's lots of articles out there. Even AI. Go to LLM and ask about it, and ask the LLM to please make it simple, and it will make it simple for you. So that's a good place to start. Secondly, once you've had a grasp of what you need probably to ask, are staff capable of being able to bring you to that particular standard? Do you need outreach? So if, let's say, internal staff, maybe your staff need extra training. Maybe they need to go to some courses, catch up, maybe even get certifications. There are some certifications out there coming along in these sort of areas. And also too, there's a lot of certifications that are now covering this as part of their base line, like IC2 do that. And also too, or external professionals, getting someone in that's reputable, qualified, certified to come and have a look at your company or your organization and help you shortcut, get to solutions quickly, because this hasn't got to be burdensome. It hasn't got to be a headache. And as I said, it's not all about a huge rush. It's a journey. You need to just work through this. Set aside budget, keep at it, and this is what these big players have done. The larger banks, they did start 3 or 4 years ago. They did start with a budget. They did start with an idea, and they're working towards that. So now is the perfect time to do that. Sorry, Judith, I can't hear your audio.
So is this a technical issue?
It is.
Is it more than a technical issue?
It's more than a technical issue. It's technical, but it is also organization policy risk. Your organizations do need to look at the risks, and often have been using the words risk in this component, as I've been talking about all the way through.
Yeah.
So this is where you need to start looking at risk management. It is something that you would put in there with pandemics, or natural disasters, or floods, or anything else that you put in your risk. Like, most people didn't think they'd be putting in pandemics as a risk like 3 or 4 years ago, but now it's definitely in their risk plans. So yes, same deal. We have technical risks that are coming up, which are global due to technology changes. We need to treat these risks and triage them, and that'll be both a technical and organizational and governance driven requirement.
Absolutely. So when you talk about risk management, the one single thought which flashed across my mind, it's all to do with lifecycle management of every technology. And that should be the fundamental or the foundation of every technology adoption. And what we are seeing right now is that's something which the organizations have not paid attention to, or they've been very selective where they would apply lifecycle management. Right? So which probably have operational impact in the immediate short term, but a risk of this stature, especially when the attackers are going to harvest now, decrypt later, and monetize it even later, that risk is far greater than the operational impact they may have in the short term. Right? So Ben, what would be your closing thoughts?
So my closing thoughts are, I'll reiterate, it's a journey. So this is important. It's something that the management need to pick up. The safest organisations won't be the fastest; they'll be the most prepared. So, again, organisational start at that end, get the right training, get the right understanding, talk to the right people, start your journey now, and once you start that journey, you'll start to understand quite a few things I'm talking about. As you go through that, because we're only as strong as our weakest link, and we need to have a strong cybersecurity community and organisations and governments that are all ready for this. That way, that when this does happen, there'll be the least amount of impact operationally. When it comes to information that's been probably taken already and maybe being decrypted, we may need to prepare for that as well. That's going to be probably more legal, privacy, talking about that. But that's going to be a very difficult one and a bit of an unknown at the moment in how to label that risk. But generally, that's not going to be cyber criminals, I don't think. So cyber criminals are many years away from doing this, but nation states, yes, definitely a problem, particularly people of countries with corporations with government secrets or government contracts, so forth. That may be something to consider. But as I said, safest organisations won't be the fastest; they'll be the most prepared.
So, being most prepared for me is being resilient, right? So this has to be part of your resilience program. To identify the risks, put in place a plan, get the necessary budgets, and go through your policy framework and update them continuously. So with that thought, Ben, thank you so much for being here, sharing your time, sharing your knowledge and insights. And I personally gained out of it. It was very refreshing, and I'm hoping that our audience will also gain out of this conversation. So looking forward to having you in another episode in the future. So in the meantime, I wish you and your family the best of everything the year 2026 would bring. And the audience, thank you so much for patronizing us throughout this year. So we look forward to your continued support. We would be bringing insights. We would lead the conversations on very important topics. We bring industry experts like Ben and have those conversations so that you could take something out and apply it in your own organizations. And in the meantime, if you do have any specific topics which you feel should be a discussion, let us know. Write to me, reach out to me through inbox, call me, whatever is convenient to you. We'll be more than happy to have those conversations in this platform. And those of you who are not following us, please follow us, subscribe, share this video with your friends, and we look forward to your association in the future. Thank you so much.